Zach Sang and the gang.
Zach Sang and the gang hanging out right now in the studio. Mark Ronson, hello, sir.
Hello.
Dude, killing the game right now. Redoing the way Top 40 plays the game.
Wow.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Yeah, the song Uptown Funk that I did with Bruno, it's kind of wild how, people have really just, straight off the bat, the reaction's been amazing. Like when we kind of started in the studio, I never know if something's going to be a hit or not. I'd be like a terrible A&R person, but I know when it feels really good in the room and you're just like, and you're all buzzing off it. And it's kind of amazing that everybody seems to have the same thing to it.
I mean, you really did. When you introduced the new single that you're doing right now with Bruno Mars, Uptown Funk, it was a game changer, and it still is, because I feel like when you listen to the song, it sounds so unique.
Right.
A lot of pop music, I'm sure we'll go through the list of people you've worked with. I mean, you could hear, pieces of other songs in it.
Yeah.
Whereas yours is just completely you.
Yeah.
There's nothing else out there that sounds like it. I mean, is that crazy to think about?
No, listen, that's what I'm always trying to go for in the studio. That is really the ultimate, to like have something that's really unique, that doesn't sound like anything else, and that people can get, and it's like instant. So, yeah, that's the ultimate compliment. Thank you.
Could you walk me through your relationship with Bruno? Because he's played a huge hand, obviously in Uptown Funk, but also in your album. You guys really work together on a lot of stuff. Sure.
Well, Bruno. I met Bruno. I met him when we started to work on his second album, Unorthodox Jukebox, and I co-produced Locked Out of Heaven and Gorilla and Moonshine. And then when I started this new album, I played him some of the demos that I had, and we were in his studio in L.A., and we just started jamming on this idea. He got on the drums, I was on guitar, and Jeff Basker was on the keys, and we got the small initial bit of this groove of this song, and we wrote the first verse. This hit, that Ice Cold Michelle Pfeiffer, and
so good.
We were really psyched. We're like, oh, this is exciting, but what happens with a lot of promising ideas, when you try to finish them, they can almost just completely self-destruct, because you keep trying to beat what you had.
It's overwhelming.
Before.
There's too much good stuff.
Yeah, and we're like, this is not good enough, this chord, da-da-da. And it was really about, Bruno was on a world tour, so he'd be like, all right, I got this different idea for the bass line. So I grab a bass, fly to Toronto, wherever it was. And then finally in the last stage of it, he was like, I got this idea for this bass line. It's like, do-do-do-do-do-do. And that was the gel. That was the gel when the whole song really came together. And then we it all got finished quick
awesome.
from there.
I mean, I'm doing research on you, right? You spent so much time on this album. I feel like you take your time doing things, and you don't half-ass anything.
You know what? I thought that, this record, this is actually my fourth album, and I've had some success, overseas. Never really anything here, to speak of, not with my own records. So I just knew that this album, if it's not perfect and it's not awesome, then what's the point, really? So I did really spend my time, and you look at things that kind of have stood out from the past little while, whether it's Daft Punk or Pharrell or what Bruno does, to make an impact and stand out, it does take the time. I'm very impressed by the production of Skrillex and Diplo and those guys, and they can do that stuff on their laptop on tour. I need live musicians, I need a studio, I need these things to make records. So it does take a little bit longer.
I mean, you mentioned some other musicians in there, and it's something that I wanted to get to, because, you have won a Grammy, right? You worked with Amy.
3.
I mean,
sorry.
That's
no,
please correct me when
that's
it comes
okay.
to Grammy.
Yeah,
Who's counting?
And the Grammy nominations were just released on Friday. I mean, what do you think of these Grammy nominations? What do you think the artists now that you hear on the radio? Because I'm sure, when you're here in New York or in LA or whatever, you want to kind of listen to the radio when you can in the car.
Sure.
Because those are not your competition, but
you want to be up on what's going on.
Yeah, their songs play before and after yours.
Of course. And I come from being a DJ. I used to DJ clubs before I moved back to England, New York City for 10 years. So, yeah, it's always important to me. And I'm a pop culture junkie, so I like to know what's going on. It doesn't necessarily mean I love all the music, but I think actually now is a really interesting time, because you can see things like a band like Disclosure can have a top 10 record, and Sam Smith is obviously a great soulful singer. And there's really exciting, weird things that can happen in the charts because of the way it is now with streaming and YouTube contributing. You can have Harlem Shake be #1 for 6 weeks, and there's good stuff, and then there's crap. There's always gonna be a little bit of crap, and then but that keeps it healthy because then you know what the good stuff is.
Does that show promise for the whole pop industry as a whole? Because let's be real, I've been in Top 40 radio now for like 8 years, so like I've seen it grow and seen the different waves that we've gone in. Like there is, like you said, there's a little bit of everything, and the door isn't closed. You see a lot. You see now a lot of alternative tracks making top 10 and then crossing over. You see the same thing with a lot of urban tracks, hip hop tracks, like all crossing over. It's kind of a mishmash.
It is. It's a little bit of a free for all, and I think like in England, you always had because England's a much smaller country. If a song kind of captured just public attention and really went well, it could go like top 5 really quickly, really and that was why it was really interesting in the English charts. But now with the way that Billboard works and all that stuff, you're getting that here, like viral and all these things. So it's cool. I think it's healthy.
Why did you think it was the perfect time for Uptown Funk?
I guess it's just because it's the time that we actually finished it, and we just got. I think we just got really lucky. Like he's a very smart young man, and he was just like he's really aware of like the kind of landscape, and he was like, dude, don't worry. Like he's like, music needs this right now, and I think it's just a time when it's good to have like a really awesome dance song that's played live instruments, and it's just like original, and I guess that's it. And I'm just happy it's kind of out finally, and it's great that it's happening at a time when people seem to want it.
What is the creative structure between you and Bruno? Like when you're working on a track, how much is you, how much is him? Like, are you guys both pitching ideas, or like what is the chemistry like? Because you both are creative powerhouses in your own right.
It's definitely he's definitely, the more and more I work with him, the more I realize like not only is he's an amazing live performer, if you've seen the show, like you kind of know, and but he's also, he's an incredible producer as well. Like he has great arrangement ideas. Like I said, he came with that bass line. So it's like very much a back and forth. When it comes to anything like melodic or hook wise, of course I defer to him because I'm like, this dude is like the hook master. He's had like 17 top 10 singles, So it's like, if he's like, really, I think this part is more catchy, I'm very happy to just surrender my ego and go with him on that. But it's cool. It's like, listen, I'm a bit of a perfectionist in the studio for sure. And he is maybe even more so than me, and that's why maybe this song took so long to get it right, because we kept knowing it could be better, it could be better. Anytime it was maybe an 8 out of 10, he was like, let's just nail that, whatever that bass riff is on the turnaround, and all these little things that came together to make the song what it is.
Let's talk about your album, because on your album, you've done, again, something different. I was reading a ton of stories on you. You brought in a novelist to work on lyrics. I've never heard of that being done before. That's awesome.
Well, there's this author named Michael Chabon who wrote, he's my favorite kind of living author, and he wrote this book, Amazing Adventures
of Cavalier and Clay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
it's one of my favorite books of all
Me
time.
too.
Yeah, it's so good.
Me too. It's amazing.
It has everything you'd ever want out of a book.
Everything. It's just
magic, circuses,
comic books.
It's everything you want.
Yeah, and he actually, that was my favorite book, and he won the Pulitzer Prize even for that book. And when I started to write this record, I had actually gone to a book signing of his, like as a book groupie. Like I'd gone to meet him, like he was signing his new book, Telegraph Avenue, and I met him, and he actually like figured out who I was and told me that he'd like some of my music. And then when I started to write this album, I thought like the lyrics have to be about something more, a little bit more maybe than I'm even capable of doing. So I'm going to write a letter to this guy.
That's awesome.
And I wrote a letter to him, and he was totally down. So he came and started writing lyrics, and sometimes would send him a piece of music with the melody, and he would like see how many syllables, from whatever the melody was, and write it. So it was just an amazing thing to work with him. And then when we were working on the record, Jeff Basker, who produced Fun and Kanye, is an amazing producer, he had this idea that we should drive through the South.
Best idea.
Yeah.
I think there's, you probably, just, I want to hear about your experience, but the talent that lives there.
It's great.
That lives in
really
those
crazy.
churches.
Yeah.
How unbelievable is it? And the power behind those voices and the passion and emotion. You can't find that anywhere else, really, can you?
You can't. And even if we hadn't found a singer to go through the South and go to these churches and to see where gospel came, which became soul and rock and roll and every kind of music that we love, it's just like you're just constantly blown away. Like you don't hear a bad singer in the bunch. We were just looking for a specific voice and somebody to put on this record, and we were lucky enough to find this incredible female singer, Keani Starr, in Jackson, Mississippi.
Wow.
And she's on the record. And just driving through the South, going to Jackson and Memphis and when we were in Memphis, I fell in love with Memphis. I'd never been there, and we ended up going back there. I just had a feeling when I got there, I was like, we're coming back here to record the record. Like, Memphis is magic. So
yeah.
That's what happened. And
That's awesome.
And that must mean something to you, recording a record, in a place like Memphis, because, you recorded this a whole record, and this, not just the single, but the album, so many different places. I mean, does your location matter something to you? Like, is there connection to each location that you record in?
I think so. I mean, the bulk of the record really was recorded in Memphis. We did some little bit of like overdubbing and extra recording or scattered around. But Memphis was a place we went there, and we went to Sun Studios where they did all the Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis stuff.
How cool.
And it was amazing. We recorded there for one night, and then the next day we went to Royal where they did all the Al Green stuff.
Nice.
And we just fell in love with that place, and it's still got the same drum kit that they used on Love and Happiness and this
Wow.
amazing stuff. And I just said, we're coming back to this place. So we spent 2 weeks in Memphis and then came back, and Bruno and Mystical and everybody came down. We did another 2 weeks, and it was just, it was incredible. It was just, it's just kind of magic there.
That's pretty generational too. I mean, if you think about it, like, you guys are now responsible for keeping their type of music, their genre alive, and to be working in those studios, and to be working in the halls that they worked in. That's pretty incredible.
It is amazing, and you're definitely aware of it's almost like everyone's in there sort of chasing the ghost. So it's great though, because it's like, we weren't trying to make a record sound like Al Green, but knowing that those great records were made there, it makes you work a bit harder to strive. You're like, whoa, like we could just phone this in, but actually like thinking of all the other stuff that went on here, we should really try and make this give our all on this, I guess.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's crazy.
That's awesome.
Wow, that trip to go and find, vocalists. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really great.
What was the most wild thing you saw down south? That you were like, whoa, this is the South, yeah.
Actually, it's weird because I guess I expected to feel a bit more fish out of water or whatever, and the more you just go down there and you realize that the Southern hospitality thing is really not a myth. And
sure.
Obviously I OD'd on Gus's fried chicken, which was pretty great. The Studio Royal is it's an amazing place, and it's actually Willie Mitchell who founded the place. It's that street is named Willie Mitchell Boulevard, but there's also some bad areas around, and you hear gunfire and stuff like that. There's some times that you're reminded that you're in
the real
deep
life.
in Memphis.
Yeah.
But the whole thing was really, really awesome. Even if we hadn't found the singer, I would still go back and do that trip.
Cool. Really? So talk to me about the vocalist. Where'd you find her? What's her story?
Kiani, basically we went to some of the auditions happened in different places, like in the rectory halls in different universities or colleges or high schools, or sometimes we'd just be in the side bar room at a loud karaoke club with the Lil Wayne bass 808s filtering under the door. These people are trying to sing John Legend a cappella. But we with Kiani, there's a place called the Penguin, this cool place at I think it's at Jackson State or Mississippi State University, and she just sang a couple songs, and the minute she opened her mouth, it was like we heard the voice that we kind of been envisioning in our head when we've been writing some of these songs.
Wow.
Which is why we got in the car in the first place. So, and she had this big ass spiky cool earring coming out, and she definitely had a lot of charisma, and she was just kind of badass and great, and that's it. So she sings a couple songs on the record, and Jeff and I are gonna make an album with her next. And
wow.
Yeah.
You just changed her life.
Yeah.
It's funny, I talked to her and I was like, we met her, we thought she was great, and we were like, well, we should still get her to Memphis just to try out on the mic, because she never really recorded in a studio. Someone can be great live. So she came to the studio and she starts singing, and then we're like, whoa, this is really good. And so I'm like, I should just tell her this might be about to be something that could be upset her life a little bit for good or bad. And I was like, is it cool? Do you know this means a lot of waking up at 6 a.m. and going and doing all these kind of promotions? She's like, honey, I can't wait to quit my effing job at Comcast. She's like, let's go.
Oh, I love it. That's amazing.
Shout out to Comcast.
Yeah, whoop, whoop.
Do they own this?
No, don't worry. How special is that to you? To go and literally be able to take auditions, pick one girl, and literally pluck her out of obscurity and essentially change her life for what the world thinks is overnight. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah. I guess, it's a big deal, but it's also the same as big a deal as, me having Bruno on a single and getting to go on Saturday Night Live because of that.
Sure.
So it's like, it's amazing. And it's as much as we're going to maybe put her on the map in a way she wasn't before, her voice on our record is as much of like a kind of, I don't know, gift is the word, but you know what I mean? She's doing us just as much of a favor.
As you are doing her.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really special about you is that you are so collaborative. You love working with people.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something unique and special to you because you don't find that very often. You really don't. I mean, you want to work with people instead of just keeping it to yourself.
Right.
Why is that?
Oh, I think that I just like, I think on one hand, I'm, my forte as a producer is like lies and like writing and arranging music, right? So I guess unless I was just kind of making instrumental music, like nobody really is going to want to hear me sing. If I showed up here with an acoustic guitar by myself and was like, all right, I'm going to do Uptown Funk for you guys now, you'd be like, what is going on? But and the other thing is that I'm really lucky to work with these people that I find super inspiring and we have a common thing and we get excited about the same music and they push me. Like there's so many times when, like I said, I thought like Uptown Funk was probably good enough, we've been working on it for 4 or 5 months and Bruno's like, no, we can make it better. And I want to be like, but it's good to be pushed because it's like it does make it better. And I feel like the collaborative partners I've had is just insane.
I mean, you're dealing with creative powerhouses, and it's like when they give a note, you sit back and you think about that note. Like, do you know what I mean? You take it really seriously. When Bruno says, I think we should wait and push it, he means we should wait and push it. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
That's that's a special thing to have. Why is this project different than everything else you've done? Because you've done so many other stuff.
I think, go ahead, sorry.
No. I mean, you've worked with everyone. From Amy Winehouse to Wale. I mean, you've done so much. Why is this special and unique?
I think this is just the record that I really put the most like attention into, and I know this is my sort of like shot at saying something as far as my solo records go, and I'm really proud of what my other records had. Like the first album that came out 10, 11 years ago had Ooey and Ghostface and Nate Dogg, and that introduced me to like a bunch of people. And the second record had Valley with Amy and Stop Me. And the third record was a little bit of like a kind of like left field thing. And I don't know, this record, it just felt like it's, the time to really do something. And obviously collaborating with people that like on the level of Bruno or Michael Chabon and Jeff Basker is like obviously helped me, elevate the whole, I guess, what is it? It's definitely it's the best thing I've ever done. I don't know how much I can't expound on it anymore. I wish I was looking for words and I'm trying to say things and I'm just about to say like things that don't even make sense.
No, those are good words though. The best thing you've ever done. You've done so many amazing things. So that's huge.
I think you and music might be one of the best team players to ever exist because you can work with so many other people and your creative vibe and your creative flow and everything that has to do with you creatively just meshes so well. It's like it's meant to work with other people and for the two creative forces to come together. Right. I mean, it's really special. Do you think about when you were a DJ struggling to make it, to make it on a Friday night or a Saturday night, just struggling just to make it in general and to where you are now? I mean, it's special.
It's definitely wild. I mean, I think about like when we got to play Saturday Night Live a couple of weeks ago, I remember somebody said to me, like, was this something that was always on your bucket list? And I was like, no, because like my bucket list is at least slightly grounded in reality.
Right.
Like I didn't even, that's not even on the bucket list category. So it's wild. And especially because I, grew up watching that show. I grew up in New York from the age of 8. Like I've watched pretty much probably 80% of the episodes of that show, whether it's terrible or amazing. So and that moment just before it comes back and the band plays when they show the picture of the band in the commercial break and it was us and I was like, I just cannot believe this is happening. So it's wild to go from DJing clubs, but even when I was DJing in the clubs I was having such a great time playing. I was never thinking like, oh man, if I don't get to that place.
Right.
So it's all pretty crazy.
I mean, when you were DJing clubs, I mean, I was again reading stuff on you. I mean, you were kind of just you really were focused on how the music flowed into one another and to keep the tempo and the vibe afloat, right? I mean, that was something you took very seriously.
Very seriously. And, New York clubs, like, New York can be the best crowd and also the toughest critics.
yeah.
Like, you absolutely have to, like, keep it. I was playing in sort of, like, hip-hop clubs where, like, not only is this crowd, like, very critical, but they could be, like, violently tell you, like, if they didn't like what you were doing.
no.
There'd be, like, bar fights. I remember just being in the booth and looking like the bartender would jump on the thing and like smack someone over the head with a fire extinguisher to break up a fight. This girl Ruby, shout out to Ruby.
Whoop, whoop.
But it's I was just, I guess I was playing a lot of like funk and hip hop and R&B, and then I was the first one to kind of start playing like some of the rock and roll stuff. It was a little bit before the mashups, and I remember playing like songs like I Love Rock and Roll and seeing like Method Man and Little Kim like standing on their tables like pumping their fists, and it was like kind of a really different thing. It was like the beginning of something new and a meshing of all these music, something that DJ AM, who is an incredible DJ, probably the best club DJ ever in LA, was doing, and a couple other people. But no, New York was an amazing, it's the world's best training camp for like DJing and music.
It also shows you the power of music, because you can play a track and you see their reaction to that song within a second. Like you just said, seeing Little Kim
instant.
on her table for, dancing for a classic rock song. That's the power of music.
Sure.
Like
Absolutely.
you see it in front of your face, how somebody reacts to it. Like that's crazy. Have you heard your song on the radio yet?
I have. I think the first time was maybe a couple of weeks ago, and I got in a cab and the song came on. It was wild, and I was just like, to be in New York in a taxi cab, hearing your song is just like, and I was like, oh my God. And I told the driver, I was like, this is my song.
That's me.
He kind of looked back. He's like, that doesn't sound like you. And then I tried to explain, but no, it's crazy. And my sister's always calling me like, your song's on right now, like taking pictures of like our dashboard with the thing and it says on the radio what's playing, and it's just it's crazy.
That can never get old, I don't think. So do you have a second single planned yet off the album that's not released, January 27th, Uptown Special?
I'm just actually literally finishing up everything on the record today. So yeah, there's like a couple of like boring things like sample clearance issues and stuff. But yes, there'll be plenty of great music to come from the album.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Mark Ronson, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Uptown
you.
Special, January 27th.
Exactly.
Thank you, sir.